Welcome to Nursery, a podcast from Ohio's Creative Voice.
I might be moving to New York like next week.
Oh my gosh, thank God I got you now. That's awesome.
It seems likely. I don't know. I'm going there tomorrow for a job interview, and then
Nice.
yeah.
Man, thank you so much. Then that makes it even more. Come here. So, hey guys, my name's Lee. This is my friend Edwina. Yeah, sorry, that's cool. I've known her probably since 2001, maybe something like that. My friend Peppy, who's in the band that I whore out a lot on this podcast, was her buddy. He moved from school to school to school, so he got to be friends with so many people. Everybody loved him immediately. Everybody had crushes on him. Everybody was just like, "It's Peppy, there he is." And he was gay. He turned out to be gay. Such is life. But yeah, lots of girls were his buddy, and he would be like, "Hey, this is my friend. This is my friend," and he would kind of inadvertently, in a very sincere way, like, network, and then we'd all have these house shows. We'd have a bunch of friends at house shows. It was so much fun, and it was one of those times where, and I talked about this with my friend Icarus, it was one of those times where, like, no one had jobs and their mom just handed them $5, and we were like, wow, we are famous, you know. And it was really like nobody had anywhere to be. And then the minute we got out of high school, we were like, oh, okay, I get it now. I get how it is. And they're like, I don't have my mom's money anymore. I don't have this. So it was fun. But let me ask you your first question. What do you think about Ohio, especially coming from you? What do you see Ohio as a traveler, like a very avid traveler?
It's kind of a broad question.
Yeah. What do you think when you get here? Like, what's your nostalgia? What's your, that kind of thing?
Ohio, I think that there's something about people from Youngstown in general, that, or the Youngstown area, as we are not quite from exactly Youngstown.
Sure.
That, like, we have this, like, weird pride, and it's kind of like, it's kind of warped. Like, we're really proud of coming from poverty and nothing and still being in poverty, and so yeah, there's like a lot of nostalgia. When I travel, I always tell people about Ohio and Youngstown, and, like, I have friends in the Philippines now who, like, really want to come here and visit, and I think it might be a disappointment when they do, but
maybe it's like Centralia. You ever visit that? It's like in a more or less abandoned city. Maybe they want to see. I'm not saying you talk Ohio down, but maybe it's a spectacle, right?
I talk it up.
You talk it up. That's so nice to hear, actually, because my brother Steve travels a lot too. And he says it was totally a different take, and one which I respected just as much. But he said he doesn't usually tell. He's not like, guys, in Ohio there's this and this and this, and like he doesn't. He tells them it's cool, but for him, I think because it's the people so much, and it's his little, like, stop off home base in between projects.
Yeah.
He doesn't. I like that. That's a cool take that you, like, you're somewhere like in India or something. You're like, have you heard of Youngstown, Ohio?
Exactly.
I like that.
Absolutely.
I like that. Yeah.
I mention, well, as a vegan, I always mention that we have 2 vegan restaurants here, and we have, like, a population that's so small, which is huge. So, like, every vegan I meet is like, what? There's 2 vegan restaurants in your hometown of, like, 10,000 people? Yes. Yeah. But also I like to mention really random things like Cedar Point and and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Mill Creek Park and, like, abandoned steel mills and things like that.
Gosh. As someone who, since you're traveling, you have a good perspective. See, the last few people I talked to are so close to it that they don't say that stuff. Like I was like, it's not really a landmark state. It's like a little nooks and crannies place. But you got named. You actually tell them about Mill Creek and stuff, and that's great. Which is a beautiful park. But, like, I think other people sell themselves short.
Yeah.
And sell Ohio short because they don't realize, because they're so close to it. What could it be? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. When I meet people from, like, California, which is, like, it's a different country, to be fair. Like, I really have a difficult time communicating with people from California. I love them. It's just, it's like, they're from Venezuela. But they often get Ohio confused. Like, people from the U.S. actually are like, Ohio, Iowa, Idaho, Which one? Like
That kind of makes sense. But Ohio is much prettier than.
Yeah.
I haven't actually. I assume Idaho's okay. Ellen's been there. She likes it. But dude, Ohio is a little bit more beautiful. You know, like that's
they
what
have
I
more
think.
corn than us.
Yeah, more than us. And cornfields are beautiful, but that's the real what they think Ohio. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, California. Okay, you said California people. They definitely are from a different country, planet, whatever. And it's not in a bad way, but they like. You probably know some facts, and we don't have to get too deep into this, but some people say they're more. Like they pollute more than we do and stuff like that and in certain areas, and I don't know all about that, but a lot of times people paint this picture, which I'm not saying I subscribe to, but I hear this, and maybe it's from these same people you're talking about in Ohio that are too proud, but they always talk about people that are like, we're West Coast California, you guys know nothing, you're conservative, you're nothing, but then they always spin it like California pollutes more, has more smog, has more this and that. They don't actually have good resources. Yeah. They always paint it like that. And I've never been to California either. I've been to Washington, Oregon. I was born there. And I love what I've seen of, West Coast, Northwest. I'm sure San Francisco is beautiful. I'm sure there's great places. But yeah, people that come from there oftentimes will be like, the economy is a lot better out there. You move out there, you get into show business, you get into some creative art thing and this and that. And I love the idea of that. Yeah. But it sounds hectic. Yeah. It sounds like scary. And
I was just talking to someone about how, I don't know if it's true, but there's like a sort of like a saying that people from Ohio measure distance in time. And like we say, like, how far is it? Oh, it's like an hour and a half away. And like we don't say like miles, right? But I was talking to someone the other night about this, and they said that it's because we don't have like traffic issues. So like everywhere else they would measure in miles because it could take you anywhere from an hour to 4 to get somewhere depending on traffic. But here we're just like, it's an hour and a half away. How far is Cleveland? I don't really know.
Yeah.
It's about an hour and a half.
Yeah, you don't say, so you're saying nobody says like 80 miles or 70 miles.
I mean, maybe someone would say it, but typically we would say like, it's an hour and a half away, it's an hour away, it's 20 minutes or whatever.
What a perceptive thing. I never my whole life thought about that being in Ohio. That's interesting. It's probably akin to some of the small town where we come from, East Palestine, Columbiana, Ohio. People talking landmarks rather than like east-west, northeast, southwest. Go south on Main Street, left, and then stay. Like they're always like, there's a big puddle, and then, there's a big rock. And you take a left by the rock.
That was the best directions I've ever heard in my life.
And then my grandma will be on the fork and you take a left. It's like they're so personalized.
Go past the big puddle.
Yeah, go past the big puddle. My grandma will be at the fork. She'll wave you on. And you're like, why? Does she have something to do with the direction? And they're like, no, she's just always there. It's like that kind of
Sitting
thing.
on the porch.
Yeah. So it's a very endearing area that we live in for sure. But I totally get what you mean. Like, acting so proud and somewhat hostile about a low income area is weird too. Totally. Like taking what you can get is good, but then putting it in other people's faces is bad. And I think I was guilty of it a few years ago. Like if like a friend or one of my brothers would be like, I'm moving here, I'm going here, I'd be like, you can't find anything there that you don't have here. And I meant philosophically, and to an extent it was true, but I did it in an aggressive way that didn't make sense. Like I was like, you can't go out in the middle of the woods and find yourself if you're not already if it's not already found before, and that kind of George Harrison type.
Yeah.
Maybe the words I said were true, but the way I said it wasn't. Like the way I said it, I was like, you think you're better than me? You can move out of it. Like it was like that kind of attitude, and I kind of regret that now, and I think inadvertently people like you from this area who know that they can keep roots but can still go wherever for however amount of time have taught me like, no, it's okay. And actually only recently, a couple years ago, going to work in Seattle for 9 weeks, even though that's not really a long time, that opened I was like, yeah, it doesn't really change your life. If you are who you are, it doesn't really change your life. So in the same token, why would I be scared of someone leaving? Ellen wanted to get married in 2000. We were in the early 2000s. We were arguing about it, and I was like, "We should be one of those couples that stays together forever and doesn't get married, so we can prove that it doesn't need that piece of paper." And she was like, "Well, why do you think that?" I was like, "Because the certificate doesn't make a difference. And she was like, well, if it doesn't, then what's the big deal? And that's how she got me. You know what I mean? And the same token thing is for that same, and on that same token is travel. If I'm like, it doesn't make a difference, then the person traveling can be like, then what's the
Yeah,
So
it doesn't make a
it was
difference.
really smart. You know, it's like, it's just, all you gotta do is flip it and you realize that neither side is worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've been really uptight and weird about like things like that when there wasn't even a side to take. You know what I mean? There was like nothing. There was nothing there. So I always kind of like really credit a lot of my friends and family and people like that for teaching me that lesson. Because I know you probably look at me, you don't see an old dude stuck in a small town by any means, but I like that's I think in my heart, or you know, if reincarnation is real, I'm like an old soul or something.
Yeah, maybe
You know what I mean?
something like that.
Yeah, but
You can't be an old dude because we're the same age. So
No,
if you're an old dude,
I
then
don't think I'm physically old. You look very young, by the way.
So
You're, no.
we can't be old.
We
We're not old yet.
at least you and me both look at least on the nose our age or lower.
Okay.
We don't look like, no one would be like, oh, are you 35? Like, right, just so you listeners know, both of us are around 30, right?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, around 30. We're not going to review, I'm 30.
I'm 30 as well.
Yeah. But we both look okay for our like. Well, we both look good, but we both definitely don't look too weathered for our age.
Yeah.
Is all I mean.
We've both gotten offers to be in Hollywood films, but it didn't happen.
We're both supermodels, and we look 20.
Absolutely.
I don't even want to look 20 really when it
No.
comes. Yeah, I don't know why people say that.
Me neither.
Okay, so that kind of leads, when I mention reincarnation, that leads me to my next little question. You're fine. Don't worry. If you have to answer something, you can answer. My next question is, what religion are you? What's your spiritual outlook, if you don't mind answering? Would probably be a very educational answer for me. My questions are weird questions.
I guess I'm nothing. I used to like to say, to be funny, that I was severely agnostic. That I thought
Oh,
that
I like that.
anything is possible, like very possible. But if I get into like looking at things with a critical eye, maybe nothing is possible. But so anything and nothing, that's where the severely agnostic comes in. I don't know. I've met people from all over the world that are all different things and all different versions of something and nothing. And the older I get and the more I experience, the more I realize like it doesn't really matter.
No.
And I'm gonna sound like the weird hippie, but
No.
whatever gets you through the day, as long as you're not pushing it on someone else. Although people have compared my veganism to like to some sort of evangelical Christianity or something like that.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to go that way. With that. Yeah, I thought you were going to say something more along,
But
Indian culture or something. But,
I'm.
but you're just saying if you were passionate about it, people would say that to you, right?
Right. Like I guess like I think. Like the world should be vegan, and I guess like evangelical Christians think the world should be Christian. But I also don't think that I need to be like yelling at anyone.
No, but I like, you know what, personally on that note though, I do kind of like the inclination of it. I wasn't able to stay on the bandwagon of even being a vegetarian. I did it for 3 years and I felt really good the first year, and then I did what a lot of people do, and I didn't save my money correctly to get the good things I should get. I started eating sides instead of meals. And, like, that's just a horrible way to go.
Yeah.
But I really do still in my heart ideally feel that no matter meat or not, the mass production of it and the way that people are treating it is wrong. Like, I'm with you to an extent of like, though I'm not living it out loud in any sort of way, I don't like when I come upon somebody who thinks that, well, you have to feed everybody and this is how you do it, and they think that the industrial way that we're doing it is right. Like, of course, mass production for a country of tons of people is inevitable, but the way that they act like what is necessary and what's not, and what you throw away and what you keep, and how much gets thrown away, even if you just go to somebody's wedding or graduation and just take a look at the catering, even vegan or not, the people have these policies, like, we gotta toss it, we can't give it to you to take home, all that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what kind of gets me about just food. Wastefulness is kind of what kind of comes to the forefront when people think about especially meat. Like, my brother Jack, oftentimes he said if he was ever to eat vegetarian or vegan, it would be on the basis of just sheer like cutting down on the mass of
right. The environmental impact is huge,
Yeah,
you know, like, and it's something that, you know, people thought was for like granola hippies for years and years, and now the United Nations, now Bill Gates, all these like really, not that Bill Gates is the United Nations or anything, but he's throwing a lot of money behind a really big animal or plant protein like meat replacer.
Which is awesome.
Because he feels, even though he's not vegan, he feels that the only way to sustainably feed 7 billion people, or in a few years 10 billion people, and in a few more 14 billion people, is through plant protein. It's just not. It's not sustainable in any way. Like, and I actually have some good friends that went vegan for environmental reasons to begin with, and then the ethical thing came later. But it's kind of ridiculous. Actually, I was just talking to some friends of mine about Greenpeace. Greenpeace does a lot of really cool things, but they don't, you know, they talk about climate change, but they don't, I don't want to say they don't make a statement on veganism, because certain national entities, or I don't know what they're called, whatever, like there's Greenpeace USA, there's Greenpeace Greece, there's Greenpeace Australia. Some of them do make a statement about veganism because it is the #1 contributor to carbon emissions on the planet, the meat and dairy industry. So some of them do make statements about it, but in general, they're paid by a lot of big agri lobbyists to not say anything about it, even though they're fighting climate change and trying to save the Arctic and these endangered species. But there's one really, really simple thing, and here goes my evangelism. There's one super simple thing, and it's not even being active. It's being non-active in something, just to leave animals off of your plate. Like, it's not like you don't have to go out and do something, you just have to not do something, and it's super easy. And I know that everyone's on their own journey. I should be, you know, I should be more a lot of things. So, like, everyone takes their own steps, but it's super important too.
Well, you know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like your be-all, end-all is that people need to at least, and maybe I'm wrong, I know that you want to stick with, like, what your real statement is, that they should leave it off their plate, but you'd be happy to see, just like you said, with them implementing more vegan foods to feed large populations, you'd just be happy to see people know that they can mix little pieces of meat in with their rice and vegetables and stuff, right? It's like they don't have to have this big hunk on their plate.
Everyone's on their own journey. Of course, perfect world, everyone would be 110% vegan.
Yeah,
but
and I don't want you to back down from that. But you'd love to see just less waste, less
absolutely.
Things like,
Just like with anything that you have any kind of ethical thought on, like, should people recycle? Yes. If they can only recycle their plastic, awesome. Yeah. If they can only, you know, like, whatever
just
step you
can. Easy things, Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes you get I've gotten the eye roll a lot if I say something like, turn the heat down while we're gone, or like, don't run the dryer somewhere. Not from Ellen, she's cool. She's very much like me, tries to economize, but I've just gotten it like here and there from friends and stuff. If I'm like, I'm going to walk instead of drive over a couple blocks, or I'm going to do this and do, and just little things, and I'm not doing it because I'm like, because we have to, guys, so you know, because I'm better than you, we have to do that, but it's like, it's just things that I would have done anyways, just little things that, like, you're like, might as well not turn the car on for that. Might as well not have the heat blast where no one's in the house. Put a little sweater on the dog, though that's the cheesiest thing in the whole world. You know what I mean? Like, there's just, put a blanket on. You know, just the heat. Don't eat meat every meal, obviously. Like, eat some grains and fruits. And just good things. Little tiny things that get the eye roll from people as if I'm being impractical. You know what I mean? Absolutely.
It's like totally crazy. I you know, I've always been, like, somewhat conscious of it, but this past year, I spent a few months on a reforestation project in South India, and it was a vegan community where they attempted to be zero waste. They were not quite zero waste because we did produce some waste, but like we essentially didn't waste any food. We didn't use any plastics. We didn't use everything was repurposed as well. Like
that's awesome.
And it was really eye-opening, and we had to hand pump our water from the ground, carry a bucket over to the showers, and use a cup. And you realize, like, I mean, I know, especially as, I don't know, like, liberal Youngstowners, I think we have some consciousness of conservation and things like that, and liberalism or whatever. Right. But I really couldn't believe how little water I needed to bathe. And when I come home and I stand in the shower for 10 minutes and like my drain was like really slow at my mom's house where I'm staying, and I saw how much water accumulated. And I was like, oh my God, this is like 7 buckets. And I used to use a half a bucket to bathe in India, you know? And I'm like, it's just crazy the things that you see. And like, so that's when I'm like, I can be making way bigger steps every day. And that's why like you have to have like some compassion for people who aren't ready to make every step. Also like fair trade and things like that are super important. And I don't follow it as I should. When I was living in India as well, there was this guy there that had saved all of his trash for the last 4 years in his hut. Like he had a private hut, and he took me and a few people to go look at his trash, and he said he doesn't throw anything away so that he has to see it every day. He keeps it like underneath his hut, but he goes down and he like looks at it and sorts it and tries to repurpose what he can, but he wants to see it so that he's reminded every time he thinks about buying something. What's going to happen to that packaging, or what's going to happen to it after I'm done with it. And I think that's like really awesome. Like,
no, that's great. That's great. I mean, you know, and you don't need to, you definitely, I don't see you doing it too much, but you don't need to get down on yourself for feeling like too liberal for this area or anything. It's like so relative. It's like, and I'm not saying that we're both big hippies, but like the people
Speak
that
for yourself.
Right. No, yeah. But you know, my parents raised me. Yeah, my parents, like I told this story on another podcast. My parents did the thing where if one of them bought like something kind of fancy, like just orange juice that wasn't watered, that they didn't water down for weeks, like they yelled at each other for wasting. And so I was raised, I can relate with you in that I had no choice but to be raised under that roof. And my obvious reaction when I was 13, 14, 15 was to eat junk, because I was raised on such healthy food that was my way of rebelling.
Yeah.
And it's so weird. Like, but I didn't eat one preservative, one piece of anything that had artificial color in it for years and years and years.
Well, that's really awesome.
And they were great. They were just great about it. And they were from Columbiana area. They were from Medina, Sebring, Columbiana, just like around Ohio, Cleveland, Youngstown area. And that's what they wanted. And they went to college in different states. They had me when they were in Portland, Oregon, and they came back. And so I had that influence that you probably had, where I didn't watch a whole ton of TV. I didn't eat a whole ton of junk. Like, I had conscious, like, family
I wasn't allowed to have pop until I was like 15.
And then
only
did you just guzzle it when you were allowed? Yeah, me too. I mean, it really, I'm totally okay with people and what they look like and things, but I'll tell you, I looked like a different dude once I was like out of high school, because then I lived on my own and just drank soda for breakfast. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just like,
absolutely.
I'll tell you, like, man, I was a different person because and I don't blame my parents, but I kind of, I'm like, oh, I guess they should have somehow done some reverse psychology on me, where they're like, here it is, drink it, it's yours. And then I don't want to drink it, you know, like, because I just like dove into it.
I can't remember, I once began to read Gandhi's autobiography, and I didn't finish it, so I don't want to sound too smart there or anything, but I remember, you know, he was raised as a vegetarian, and there's a part where he talks about, I think he was a teenager, maybe like 14 or 15, but don't quote me on that, and he like rebelled and wanted to, like, he like went and hid with like his friends and ate meat, and I thought that was kind of like, we think about Gandhi almost in like this like godlike thing, but he kind of did the same thing that we did.
Yeah, see, that's kind of the humanizing thing about it. Is like, that's why I don't want you to like roll your eyes at yourself for the things you do, because like I think that like everybody knows they're flawed. And the people that come at you and think that if you're telling them that it helps to eat a certain way or do this certain thing with trash or with recyclable material, they think you're saying you're better than them, and that's them. That's not you.
Right.
You know? Right. And like that's exactly the same thing as if one of my brothers is like, I'm going to California, I'm going here. If I think that they're saying they're better than me, that's all on me. They are not saying that.
Yeah,
and it's such a lame. I know I sound like a lunatic when I say that, but like, it's like if you tell someone to recycle, them taking that as you being like high and mighty, that's them. You're not being high and mighty.
You can only change yourself in the way that you think, not.
I'm sure when you say it to them, you're not all that upset when you say it to them. You're just trying to help.
Right, and even like definitely as like it's like a difficult balance as a vegan or a recycler or someone who's concerned about climate change, even just making the statement that you are one of those things can be offensive to people. They get defensive about it because they assume it's a judgment, even though you're like, no thanks, I'm vegan, and then like people get like a weird thing. But
that was just you having to tell them. You know, that's not, and it's akin to like being like, I really like this song, you should listen to it. It's not really like you're saying, be vegan now. You know, like you're just saying,
I could say that.
Check it out. And I know if you categorize yourself as even as evangelical about something like that, it's just not really that aggressive of a thing to be evangelical about. It's all good.
It's something that I think is really important too. So the balance is like being strong enough to make a statement about it, but like not wanting to like make people feel uncomfortable. Right. I think there should be like a small level of uncomfortableness, maybe. That's just a joke.
But still, I'm sure you feel it a little bit returning here. You were in so many different places doing work that I assume is similar to what you were describing, where you were trying to cut down on waste and help people and things like that.
That's what I did in India. Before that, I did some other stuff with PETA. Okay. All kinds of different stuff, but not that kind. Not that kind.
Okay. Yeah. What was it? Can you give me a little?
So I did with PETA. I did outreach. I did a lot of outreach. So I went to universities in the Philippines, and I talked to college kids and music festivals and stuff like that. And I talked to them about veganism, about wool, about leather, any animal rights issue. Nice. I also was like an activist liaison, so I responded to letters that people wrote to PETA. And I was like the government liaison as well, so I communicated with like the Congress people and senators about animal rights issues. And I met with like senators and like the former president and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
It was actually really boring, but it sounds much more interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure it made an impact though, that's what's important.
Yeah, even if it was like one person listened to me, that's a huge impact. Like,
and I'm sure it was more than one. But and then give me a little laundry list of the places you went in doing that. Like what countries were you in, or what cities were you in?
So mostly I worked just in the Philippines, but I traveled while I was there to Taiwan and to Indonesia, and I did some like leafleting, like handing out like information, and then I also traveled to Malaysia, Thailand, and I lived in China for a year, but I was teaching English there.
Okay. Yeah. No India? I had you wrong, didn't I?
I was in India, but not with PETA. Okay, so I was the reforestation project in India.
Cool, cool. Okay. Well, that's great. I mean, that had to have been an experience in itself. Even if when you got there, you did things that may have been boring for a while. Yeah. Like that sounds great.
That was cool.
And I was going to say, okay, so that's similar. So you come back to Ohio, and you see a couple of vegan places in Youngstown, and that's great. And most people I run into now, though we like to, maybe in our world of our egos being bruised, we think that East Palestine, Columbiana, Youngstown are places where people are like, you don't eat meat, what's wrong with you? People are pretty much they're very tolerant. Most of the people around here, contrary to popular belief, are nice. Yeah. There is some racism, there's a little bit of like homophobia, there's this and that, but it's really not that aggressive. And oftentimes people are just being scared of something that's different, and it can be diffused within a matter of like hours. Yeah. Like it's most of the time if someone, I think what I like about Ohio is that someone has a kid who goes to a school where there's not that many people who are different culturally, and then they see someone else, they just happen to be scared first, and then that dissipates quickly enough. So I think most Ohio people are cool, even when people say they're Christian or say that they're really like Catholic and devout, they usually kind of tagline it with like, but we're an open family. They always try to make you feel okay, even in the most I don't want to say conservative because I don't want to put a stigma on that, but the most like more fundamental families, like they usually are like, we're this, but we don't judge you for being that. So like, I'm sure over the years it's been kind of rewarding for something that you probably stood for a long time while you were even a kid to come to the forefront where now you said Al Gore. People like, no, you didn't say Al Gore.
Al Gore is vegan now.
It's a vegan thing, yeah.
But I said Bill Gates, but yeah.
Sorry, Bill Gates. You know why I made that association? Because that's a joke that everyone makes over and over about the stupid internet. I'm sorry. Yeah. Al Gore invented the internet. That's funny. Also, Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. Ha. But okay, Bill Gates. Yes, it must feel good to see it culminating in such a way where people are saying, "Hey, regardless of what you think, this is how we're going to have to manage the population.
Yeah.
And that's just a nice thing to see regulated in a good way.
Yeah. It's actually like, I was interviewed actually for a documentary when I was in India, and the guy was asking me a lot about veganism, and he just kept talking to me about how I was making such a great health decision. Like, how did I decide to be so healthy and all this stuff? And it was like 15 minutes into the interview, and I had to stop him because he was saying it so much about how I made this healthy decision, and like that was the reason that I did it. And I had to stop him, and I just said to him, like, look, it's really freaking awesome that veganism is so healthy, and like all these doctors at the Cleveland Clinic and Harvard are telling people like, this is how you reverse diabetes, this is how you reverse heart disease, this is how you like live a long time. And it's really great that it's amazing for the environment, and the United Nations and Bill Gates and all these like huge organizations are saying, yes, we need to be vegan for the environment. But even if veganism killed me, I would still be vegan.
Oh, okay. I get it. Okay.
Because it's an ethical decision for me. Like, I'm really lucky that it's not going to kill me. I mean, knock on wood. Hopefully they don't figure something out in the next 20 years. But
you're saying it's something that now you've slid into, like, just living your life that way no matter what at this point.
Yeah. And like the reason that I did it to begin with, I didn't know about all these amazing, I didn't know, like, actually in Ohio, people might be more likely to tell you can't be a vegetarian, you're going to be sickly. I didn't do it for health reasons, and I didn't do it for the environment. It just, I don't know, maybe it's like synchronicity, like maybe it, oh gosh, I sound like an evangelical again, but like everything comes together.
You made the choice that you felt like it worked for you for some reason. Yeah. You can't quite pinpoint exactly. Yeah. So you're saying, so it's like you're not really like our friend Pepe, who is like, he's just for some reason got like the self-control of like somebody ideal, like as far as like he's making the decisions based on health only sometimes, which I really admire. But you're not saying that so much.
No, I have
like,
no willpower when it comes to that. No.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't really either. I've done little things like, and they're so laughable. Like the things I've given up compared to what I still eat. Like I'm not gonna eat donuts anymore. but if I see a cinnamon roll,
it's not a donut.
I'm eating it without taking one bite. It's just going down whole. Yeah, and
absolutely. Like, I'm the vegan who will have Lay's potato chips and an Oreo, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. It's not about that.
Right.
I mean, I'm trying not to so much, but I would.
Yeah. No, and I wouldn't fault you for that. Everybody has to. Like you said, even if you found out veganism was horrible for you, you gotta live life happy rather than sad and correctly, or sad and happy and incorrectly rather than, you know what I mean.
Who knew this was going to be a podcast about veganism?
Who knew? I wouldn't have guessed it having you on here that it would be. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sorry.
No, I was hoping you would talk about it. I'm really happy you are, because it's a nice subject to educate people on. I think educating people on the personalities of vegans and just having your demeanor on the podcast is far more important than any facts that we could spout off. So that's what's important. Is like, this is a normal person. Her muscles are not gone because she, it's like this person's living just like any of us. That's what's important to note. I think I'm also kind of reflecting myself on you a little when I say, like, doesn't it feel good that Bill Gates and this and that? Because my dad was a naturopathy doctor, so I grew up with this stuff my whole life about certain things that you should eat as far as like whole foods and what herbal remedies and basically drink some soup or eat some soup, drink some orange juice before going to the emergency room type talk. Like just your body has healing powers.
They do say drink some soup in China.
Drink some soup, yeah, right. Yeah, and you're supposed to slurp really loud, right?
Yes.
Isn't that a thing? But I'm far from culturally educated, well-rounded, but I just like grew up with like, your body has healing power. You can do a lot before you take a pill.
Yeah.
Nothing against the Western medicine in certain ways. It's just like we always take certain measures before we would say, oh well, let's just kill it for a while.
I think that's really, really important. Yeah. I actually know someone who's recently diagnosed with diabetes, and she is, they gave her all this medicine and all this stuff, and it's kind of crazy. And now like she has to constantly check her blood sugar because it could now drop too low that she could like pass out or go into a coma. And it's like they're just giving her all this medication to mask the symptoms, but there's not like, and there happens to be a documentary called Reversing Diabetes in 30 Days, and it's
Okay.
through a raw vegan diet, and they there's like this like natural health center in New Mexico or Arizona, I can't remember, anyway, and they took all these people from around the country, from like different backgrounds and ethnicities and stuff, and they brought them there for 30 days, and like essentially they all reversed diabetes within 30 days. And I gave her the documentary, and she's like, I didn't know this was like a thing. Like, why didn't my doctor tell me about this? And it's something, you know, I think Western medicine has a time and a place and a purpose,
Yes.
absolutely, but I also think that we don't, you know, in medical school, most medical schools only require one nutrition class. Some require 0.
Yeah.
Like, that's unbelievable when we know that, like, what we consume is so important to everything. Alicia Silverstone, who's a big vegan, and she wrote a really popular vegan book a few years ago, and like Oprah had her on and did like a vegan challenge with her and all this stuff. And she talks about, I think it's her brother-in-law had some sort of chronic illness, and he went to the doctor, and they wanted to put him all this medicine, and she told him, you know, try going vegan for 30 days. He did it, and he went back to the doctor, and he said, you know, I don't, you know, this is basically reversed after being vegan for 30 days. Why didn't you like tell me about this? And his doctor said, well, I didn't think you would do it.
Oh, interesting.
Like, he's like, yeah, of course, that makes sense, you know. It's crazy. I'm gonna give one more really silly example. There's a documentary called Forks Over Knives, and it kind of got popular a couple of years ago as well. It's about heart disease in America and about how veganism can reverse it. And there's a doctor from the Cleveland Clinic and a doctor from Harvard who are like really big in the documentary. One of them wrote the China study, and one of the doctors is interviewed, and he says people talk about veganism as something extreme, like they have to change their whole life to be vegan. He said, but every year in America, X 100,000 people, X amount of people have their chest cut open, their ribs separated, and an artery from their leg put into their heart.
Yeah.
What's extreme?
Yeah, that's a good point. See, and like, I want to clarify to the listeners, like Edwina said, it's like, it's totally nothing. We have all learned our lessons as far as when medication is necessary, when Western medicine is necessary, when anxiety requires a certain kind of pill. Nobody's saying like, do this only and don't take. No, and I'm not speaking for Edwina. I'm just saying nobody's saying that they haven't learned lessons about the usefulness of Western medicine.
There's a time and a place for sure.
And there's a big time and place. It just simply needs to kind of be talked about kind of evangelically by people like Edwina and myself and my mom and a lot of people, simply to get the point across. It's not that we're saying only this and not that. We're just saying, please try this before that.
Yeah, or look into it. Like, maybe it's something you can do, you know, in combination with Western medicine. It's not like, you know.
But sorry, I'm not speaking for you. Tell me what you think about anxiety versus medicine. Is that what you were telling me not to say?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just agreeing with you.
Oh, good. Okay. I thought I said something that you red flag. You're like, don't you dare tell them.
No. I agree.
Yeah,
totally agree with you.
Because, you know, on the other side of the coin, me and my family grew up being like, you don't need to take anything. You can figure it all out with your mind. And we've definitely been knocked down a peg as far as learning that lesson. There's a time and a place where sometimes you're like, we need to find a chemical balance here. It can't all be like, it can't all just be exercise and vegetables.
Yeah.
I wish it could. I wish it could. And a lot of times with people, I believe that a lot of people around here have a touch of seasonal affective disorder. And I'm not saying that that's a concrete thing, but I do believe that people just kind of get forced inside with the harsh winter, and they end up that, you know, has a psychological effect on them, and sometimes things are necessary. But man, I'm totally with you on a lot of this, on almost all of this stuff, basically, because you said, you know, and one of our sponsors is my friend Pepe's like business. It's Orange Avocado Bakery. It's vegan, gluten-free treats with organic raw. It's awesome.
Awesome.
And so, of course, I couldn't be more on the same page with you on that. And I think a lot of people, even quite a few older people, because of health choices in their older age, or parents with wanting to raise their kids better, they really are into it. I mean, I can't tell you how many people go in places now and ask for certain things that are vegan or desserts that don't have dairy, because sometimes it's because of lactose intolerance, but oftentimes it's just like because they know it's not necessary, and isn't going to add anything to you health-wise in most cases.
Yeah.
I've seen you here and there at some bars, at some venues. You're checking out music in Youngstown. It's like cool to have people supporting that, and you're one of the avid supporters. Before I was going to ask you something about what song you'd listen to for the rest of your life if you only had one. But I wanted to ask you real quick, being just as a young guy who got into music in a small town, and you definitely were like an indirect influence on me as far as like punk bands go that you listen to, like Operation Ivy, and then of course Rancid after that. And I often in New Waterford, Ohio, would go to basement shows in churches where there'd be bands that sound a little like them. Your brother in that band, The Ignorance, no matter how brief or long that existence was, I never saw him. But what would you say? Can you describe to me like the Columbiana punk scene, like what it was like, just a little snapshot of it? Like,
I'm gonna dip kind of back into veganism there.
That's
My
cool.
brother discovered vegetarianism and veganism through punk music, through being in a band with people who were exploring straight edge music in Columbiana, and it's kind of random, and then that inspired me. So like it is because of punk music that I am a vegan, maybe in a way. But I was pretty young when my brother was into that stuff. I don't know. Do you know if it still exists?
I don't. I've been told by a few longtime sound guys or longtime musicians that we embody the spirit. And I think that's thanks directly to people like your brother, which again, I didn't see him, but bands that were like him, we often got asked to be supporting acts to.
Yeah.
And we have a few punk songs, but we're definitely somewhere other than that genre. But I always get more times than not from people who are over 40. I'll always get like a description of us as like embodying 70s punk. The voice of that.
Yeah.
And we're totally like post that idea. We definitely have bouncy pop, bouncy like ballady stuff. It's real soft, much less edgy. But yeah. So I always thought it was a huge influence. So I guess like I think it exists to a very small extent around here. There's like a couple bands, to answer your question, that do punk music.
Yeah, the guy that I met, he had been one of those people that went to the Hooligans basement shows all the time, but it was like sort of, he was something in between. It wasn't like the same kind of punk that, I don't know, that my brother was into and that was big then. It's like sort of some sort of mix between like punk and like urban, I don't want to say like hip hop, but something.
Maybe it simply can't be how it used to be, because that's how...
It's just evolved.
Yeah, that's even with the most punk rock people, like there's a band called like Stuffy the Sidekick, who's not from here, but I got turned on to through searching uke punk and like folk punk.
Yeah.
And we have a uke punk. Uke punk. There's a uke punk girl named her band is Human Petting Zoo, and we had her on a compilation covering a song by our band Third Class.
If I see you in Seattle and I see you again, and I've overcome the battle that I'm having within, and it's looking like my shadow is going to wear thin up the creek without a paddle.
And we were so excited to have somebody who was a punk like musician on one of our compilations. And so she's very young. I think she's like 17 right now. But we're hoping maybe down the line, if she's still doing music when she's a little older, that we can get her opening for us in bars and things like that. Because she's just, for some reason, we just go well with those bands.
Yeah,
it's
punk
weird.
Kind of had this weird evolution. Like it was underground, and then it was like kind of popular, and then I think in like the early 2000s, this like mainstream pop punk thing happened. It's kind of weird. Maybe it's sort of like what happened with Green Day. Green Day was, like a real punk band on Lookout Records that was like, making music and playing at crappy punk bars in California. And then they got signed to Reprise. They got big. then they weren't big for a while, and then again in the early 2000s when that kind of, you know, that revival of pop punk, they got popular again, and now, you know, they have a Broadway musical, and maybe that's what punk is now. I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Like, and I think that any of the bands around here, all of us are small because we're in Youngstown, but all the bands around here, the ones I can name you right off the bat that at least embody the spirit are Modern Life.
Black Beetle, take my words serious.
Yeah.
And the Nervous Jerks. We get matched up with bands like that a lot, kind of with people from Wild Kindness Records, who oftentimes just do acoustic or electronic, but definitely have the spirit in the lyrics or in the sound somewhere.
Yeah, I think that punk doesn't necessarily have to be like exactly, you know, and I, you know, not to bring up Green Day again, but they got a lot of flack throughout their career for signing to a big label, then for doing albums that were like darker or quieter or then more poppy.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, Green Day's kind of a bad example, but it's one that maybe everyone might know.
They're a good example of like the journey that people probably take when they initially want to play really loud, fast, simple, and then they kind of expand and try other things, but they still have that like spirit in them.
Yeah, and it's like people evolve, everyone changes. I mean, they've been around since God for 20 years, so. But yeah, anyway.
If you had one song to listen to for the rest of your life on an island, and it was like a boombox, you could turn it off anytime you want, it's not on repeat, what would that song be?
Just one song. This answer might be different if you ask me tomorrow.
Sure.
Okay. And I think it just has to do with like I have like a lot of like crap. I don't want to give the wrong. I feel like this is so important that I need to like
kind
pick
of is,
the right
but
one.
the bigger problem is that you're stuck on an island for the rest of your life with no one else. So you know, it's like I'm not saying that belittles your answer, but it's not your whole world. Like you'll obviously have other things on the island that you'll have to entertain yourself with too. So if you think about what song would be best in the background of that life, that might help you decide.
Oh gosh.
You're going on an island in 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm just gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Radiohead Lucky.
Oh, that's a good choice. Lucky. That's not bad because it kind of has these little movements in it, and it kind of keeps moving. It has this one little part with the guitar, and then it goes. Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. It's expansive. You can ignore it if you want to. You can pay very close attention if you want to.
And I feel like for me, it would be good because I don't know. I get like almost like a little bit of a high when I listen to it sometimes because like. When he says like it's gonna be a beautiful day, like, and I'm guessing I'm gonna be a little depressed, stuck on an island alone forever. So that might give me some hope.
And it says he says like glorious, right?
Yeah, that's it.
So that's even better because it's even just the slightest bit more vague.
Yeah.
That like beautiful works, of course.
Sorry, I said beautiful, but it's glorious.
Either way.
And the second time he says it, when there's like a little bit of like a change in his voice in the second verse.
Yeah.
I don't know. It gives me like that little bit of anticipation. What's your song?
Mine is actually a short one. It's by the Mountain Goats. It's called Broom People. And it's kind of like your lucky choice in that it's a real positive. It's like a little melancholy, a lot of happiness in there too. So it kind of embodies this well-rounded, you can take it however. If you're having a bad day, Lucky could be your little like song to cry to too.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's why I chose. Yeah, this is short. It's like 2 minutes too. It's two. I think it's 2 chords too. So that might not be so great of a choice. But the Broom People by Mountain Goats. If you ever listen to it, I wish I could just play it on this podcast. I don't want to do that because it's not my song to license. I'd love to just play the song.
Yeah.
But go look it up, you listeners, anybody. Broom People by the Mountain Goats on the album Sunset Tree. It's just such a poetic song, and he's one of those artists that like. His lyrics can mean anything in the whole world. You can interpret them any way you like. And I don't want to be told what it's about. Like, I did actually meet the dude at a show, and I didn't want to talk to him. He's probably a fantastic person, but I don't want to hang out with those people. And like, people that write the songs the soundtrack to my life or my song,
Don't
I'd
ruin
really
it.
rather not. Yeah, I'd rather not now. You know, like, and I don't think he was gonna come up to me and be like, "Broom People's about this," but I didn't want to talk to him. I don't know. It's just how it is sometimes with people like that. It's not because they're it's not has nothing to do with celebrity status or being like an artist as much as it has to do with like you did something that I'd like to interpret my own way. Please don't tell me what it's about. You know?
Yeah.
It could be anything other than a song. So
Sometimes I like to hear about like not necessarily the story behind some like why the song was written, like the story of it being recorded.
yeah. So that's a little safer to hear. Yeah.
My almost choice was gonna be potentially the Beatles' Helter Skelter, because it also makes me really happy. I heard a story about Paul McCartney said that he wrote it. He was like the shy, kind of quiet one or whatever, and he wrote the song and he was recording it. And he said that John Lennon always used to like kind of like make fun of him that he was like quiet and like not crazy and loud, and he just went nuts in the recording studio, like screaming. And he said like John was like looking at him, laughing and like egging him on, and that kind of like makes me happy every time I hear it, because I think everyone probably feels like that sometimes. I'm not picking two songs. I just wanted to tell.
No, I like the options. Yeah. And I think that's cool because if you're looking at the song as his way of proving he had some spirit to John Lennon or energy, that's awesome. I actually I like that Long on the White Album by George Harrison because I heard it. I'd probably have this wrong by now. I'd probably totally made up my own thing. But
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah, but I think he said as someone who liked Buddhism, as someone who studied lots of religions. I think Long is he's just singing to like Jesus in it. And I thought it was such a nice sentiment because it's somebody he's not at all saying Christianity is right and Buddhist is wrong. He's just like, to him, it's just, I think all religions were just simply like this flip book of cool moods you could get into. And I think he was like returning to the idea of Jesus, and he was like, he said something like, "How could I ever have left you?" And just like really beautiful thing, like saying to him like he's just this thing that he liked to pray to, not saying like, "How could I have betrayed my no, nothing like that. He was just like, it was just like a beautiful picture of what probably the Bible. I'm not a fan of the Bible, but I'm just saying the beauty that we're probably supposed to find poetically in that religion that nobody finds anymore.
Yeah.
You know, like just the same as Buddhism. You know, like something that was meant to be looked at. So like I guess like such an Eastern-minded dude singing a song about Christianity was like this nice like snowball of like perfect, well-rounded character.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I didn't buy in at all to like, whoa, he's right, Jesus, and you know, I'm agnostic myself. And then one other thing, the story behind the song, the perfect example of that, apparently Jim Henson and somebody else writing Rainbow Connection, I heard this on the Nerdist podcast or something, like they said that they were sitting there trying to get the little hook where they say Rainbow Connection, and somebody's wife or girlfriend or somebody walked in, they were like, "What are you guys writing?" And they were like, "We're just writing the last line, we're trying to find some connection with a rainbow to like get this line right." And she was like, "Why don't you just say Rainbow Connection?" He's like, "Nice." That's, you know what I mean? I really like that because that's not a telling detail. It's just something you can make beautiful when you hear it.
Yeah.
You know, like you're like, wow, she just said the words he said in a different way, and it was, you know, it doesn't reveal like this was about my son. This was about, you know what I mean? Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
the little inner workings of how you write the song is important. Okay, so I asked you all that. I asked you about this and that and blah 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 blah. What do you think when you hear the word nursery? That's my last question.
The word what?
Nursery.
Nursery? I immediately thought of plants.
Cool. You would. I guess that makes sense, right? Being a fan of vegetables, vegan, stuff like that. I like the answer. I've gotten church basement a lot from people, and that's a nice connection to punk shows, but
It is.
So it all full circles. But a lot of people have said either baby room, church basement. Ellen says plants too, because she grew up on a big nursery where they sold like, they sold like spruce trees and like, maybe I have this wrong. I don't know tree names, but they sold lots of pines to like places that are in Youngstown that like wanted like trees outside of their business or they take them somewhere else. And so like the plants thing plays heavy into why I named it that. We have a song called Nursery that we play on the beginning of the podcast and things like that. And I just think it ties. It's weird to think of the word nursery as an encompassing term, but it really works for me on here.
Yeah.
So I like to ask people because I always get a nice answer. Okay, well, Any last thing you want to add? I really appreciate you being on here. Anything else?
No.
Any other documentaries, books you recommend to people? It might be educational. You never know who's listening.
You should definitely watch Earthlings. You can watch it for free at earthlings.com. And that is the most important documentary of history.
Okay. And that's cool. Thank you. And then will you say, look, Mom, we're on a podcast, and that'll be our sign out.
Look, Mom, we're on a podcast?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Mom. Thanks for listening, Mom. We will talk to you later.
That's the way to go.
What does that mean?
See you later.
Oh, nice. I'm just kidding. Sorry.